So where was I? Oh yeah. So you know, sometimes so like it's like the loudest thing in the world. Sometimes things just take time. If you don't do them right the first time, or you don't get it done set up before, you gotta take time to do it now. You know how they say that thing, measure twice, cut once? It's more like, this is just the process of cutting. And so we're just gonna measure. And if it's incorrect, then we're going to fix it. And if it's correct, then there's nothing else to fix. And sure, we can be more efficient. And sure, we can do everything right the first time. You know, measure twice, cut once. But that still doesn't mean that when you show up to the fridge to get a glass of water, that your filter is going to be refilled. You know what I'm saying? You get it. So like, here we go. And it's filtering. Yes, I twice filter my water. I live in these here United States. And we just talked about measuring twice and cutting once. So like, maybe that's closer to like what we were talking about before. You know, measure twice, cut once. You're going to have to cut. You're going to have to do the thing. No matter what, right? You're here to build a thing. You're here to do a thing. And that means in order to build, in order to do, you're going to have to prepare the space. You're going to have to take down things. You're going to have to prepare the space again. You're going to have to measure and fit things. Then you put together, right? You know. That doesn't make you a carpenter. That doesn't necessarily make you a home builder or, you know, somebody who does construction. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. But it doesn't mean that the parameters of that which you have to do have changed, no matter how many times you've negotiated it, right? So like, I used to work for this consulting company. And one of the things that the head of the agency said, consulting company, consulting firm, and one of the head of the firm used to always say, you know what, Q, it's like the deal's the deal no matter what. We get these organizations that are looking for funding, and we're doing the consulting to get them ready for going after funding. And they go after, they get the pitch, they sit down and they get the term sheet that says, this is the deal. And usually the deal includes taking over a large portion of the ownership of the company, right? Because that's the deal, especially if it's your first time out. They're going to take a large portion of the ownership of the organization. And they don't like that. They built the company, and all they need is an injection of capital. So they negotiate. They hand it to negotiations. 1 day turns into 2 days. 1 week turns into 2 days. 2 weeks. Weeks turn into months. Now the urgency for the money has heightened. and we've negotiated all these terms out, and they look beautiful. It's exactly what I want to do in order to do any work on the house. It's exactly what I want to do to fill up my water cup. I've measured twice and I'm ready to cut once. We've measured a lot and we're ready to cut this one time. But then they talk about 11th hour. The deals seem to have changed to the original terms. They bring out the term sheet they brought at the beginning. You've negotiated for 30% of the company, so much capital, all the rest of these things. They show back up. We want 99% of the company. It's not that. We want 80% of the company. Or we want 100% of the company. The original terms, the original deal, the way it was spec'd out. The deal's the deal no matter what. What people offer you in the beginning is what they have to offer you. And we can negotiate those terms for as long as we're involved in this portion of the relationship. But when it comes down to engaging in what we're about to do, deal's the deal no matter what. If you want something different, you probably have to go find a different deal. If I want to demo my kitchen, remodel my kitchen, remodel my dining space, and put those things together, that's going to require a certain amount of steps. I can negotiate those steps. I can watch all the YouTubes. I can talk to all the construction people I want to and negotiate out what those are going to look like. But what's actually going to happen is going to happen no matter what. The deal's the deal no matter what. And if we think this is just a venture capital term sheet, or if we think this is just a remodeling project on my home, or if I think it's just anything, this shows up in our relationships as well. The difference being, we talked earlier about public, private, and the distinction between the two. In our private lives, this is constantly happening. The transfer from I just met you, you were a stranger moments ago, and now you might be an acquaintance, to being in a friendship or greater relationship. Greater is the wrong word. I don't like that word. Being in a friendship or another kind of relationship means these are my terms. This is what it takes to get to a place where we're going to engage in something that happens afterwards, something that happens during construction, something that happens during being in business, where everything's going to shift. But in order to get to the point where we can agree on terms, we must come to an agreement. And those terms of those agreement, what that actually means, the deal's the deal no matter what. This is what it takes to be in relationship with me, with you, with us, until we start working together after that agreement to come up with new agreements, amendments, addendums to that agreement that then works with and against our original agreement, given the taste and preferences of people, given the way in which our environment is consistently changing. Ain't it something that the only constant is change, therefore making the idea of consistency and a constant nearly erroneous. And everything that we're doing is pushing against that change, as if it's not ever going to happen. As if the way in which we decide to do remodeling, as if the way in which we decide to do our term sheet, as if the way in which we decide to do those things won't change after the fact. I don't know. I had a really good, there's a really good analogy in my head about the movie Nope? That Jordan Peele movie? This isn't it, but this is another thing. And it won't give away any of the movie. Boo. But it's another thing. There's this thing that occurs when you're always trying to measure somebody's expectation about the experience that they will have relative to the experience that you will have. So that way they're encouraged to participate or do a thing, but also you don't ruin it for them by impressing upon them too much of what you think already and too much of what you felt already into that. So that Jordan Peele movie, Nope. You can go in and say, oh my goodness, that was the best movie ever. It did all of these things and it did that thing, whoop-de-whoop, all the rest of that fun stuff. Or I can say, hey man, just go check it out, see how you feel, kind of undersell it a little bit. My buddy did this thing when I was about to go see this movie where they were like, you know how horror, the genre of horror over the past 30 years or so, give maybe about 10 more years, has been taking to task Stephen King. And that is to say, they've been taking to task Stanley Kubrick. Jordan Peele in Nope is not doing either one of these. In fact, in Nope, who he's taking to task is not only the person, but the industry that is Quentin Tarantino's movies. And that might be a clever way to say, you don't know us. That made me want to go see the film. I had to go see it. And I was talking to my other man and he was like, make sure you see it in the theater. That's all I'm gonna tell you. Kind of like managing those expectations. Because an experience isn't something that you can really agree upon. How you feel going into and how you feel coming out of a thing is seldom can be agreed upon. But the terms of engagement, what happens before I go into the thing, can be. Should I even go into I wonder what it would be like to spend a little bit of time on anticipation Anticipation and agreements kind of go together. And the thing that gets in the way are expectations. I expected what we agreed upon, right? I used to always say this, and I used to always say there's expectations versus agreements. But again, that versus thing kind of gets in the way of it makes one versus the other as though one doesn't exist and shouldn't exist, versus saying they do exist, but I need to do something else with that. I have expectations that your experience will be similar to my experience because we are in a relationship that is called friendship, or we're in a relationship that is called partnership, or we're in a relationship that is called whatever we call it. And so we have a set of agreements, a set of terms, whether spoken or unspoken. And so we're trying to get those to be a little bit more tangible. And so expectations always produce this kind of downfall, because what I expect and what you deliver, and what you expect and what I deliver, until we get here, until we come to an agreement. We come to an agreement. Now I can do something crazy, which is have anticipation about that agreed to thing. It's not necessarily like I'm expecting to have dinner with you when we've agreed to have dinner. We've agreed to have dinner. If we go out and we don't have dinner, that's not the agreement. That's not what we do. I've been anticipating this dinner because we agreed to it. I've been anticipating our conversation because we've agreed to it. Not we're hanging out, so I expect that we would have dinner. It's nighttime. You don't know that I've already eaten. We haven't had any agreement that this is, and it doesn't have to be as formalized as a term sheet. It doesn't have to be negotiated like that. But the idea that we can come to these micro agreements, these really small ones, these infinitesimally small agreements about just like, hey, I'm gonna do this, you do this, we're good. And that sidelines expectations and the letdowns of expectations. Because I feel like agreements, when we have an agreement between two people, when we have agreement between people and community, when we have agreement between communities and communities, then we can always come back to that and understand what we mean to say when we say things. So that way we might come to better agreements. So that way we might have a better relationship together. That somehow, we might not just leave the negotiating table. That we have something keeping us here. You know, in how did Monique settle with Netflix? They're in a good faith agreement. That's the only reason why she was able to go after them. They hadn't yet arrived at it, but they had agreed to be in a good faith agreement, a good faith negotiation, that this is what we're doing. And Netflix left the table. They put out an offer. The deal's the deal no matter what. And then when they entered into what was supposed to be good faith negotiations, so that way they could arrive at a deal that would be the deal, that would be their agreement. They already had the agreement to be in good faith. They left the table. Even a judge said, nah. And they ended up having to settle. And they ended up having to do something else and come up with a better agreement. Now her special's coming out and all the rest of these things. Agreements are important. Netflix is arguing these are expectations. You just expected this. She was like, nah, We were already at agreement. How do I want to do this? I don't know. So previously we were talking about thought and thinking. And that's where that little piece about the deal is the deal no matter what. And went to expectations and agreements, and I wonder what agreements we get into with people that we meet digitally, that we actually aren't engaged in conversation with. Like, they list out the terms and conditions. They list out what the deliverables are before you hit buy now. But that doesn't happen when you're meeting a person. Like, maybe there's something that happens before then, where you're even trying to decide if this is the road you want to go down. So maybe agreements is a little bit premature for this conversation, and maybe we might discuss that and understand that at a different time. And maybe I'm trying to come to a very deeply personal, private decision on whether or not I want to even go forward at all into negotiate. And so often is the case that choices are made in the place of decisions, and it gets real foggy. Because a choice is not a decision. And it's to the point where now, as I think about it more, I don't even think they're subtly different, I don't think they're distinct. I don't even know if they're subtly different. I think they might be things that happen because of one another, but they are wholeheartedly different. It's as though oftentimes we are pushed into making what is communicated as a choice to us when really it's a decision. It's really what actually is happening, what is being. So what I'm going to eat today this ought to be a choice based upon a decision I made to take care of my body, or a decision I made that this is a vacation and I'm not worried about any of that. So I'm just eating whatever I want. So the choices don't have to align with any previous decision. And a decision requires deliberation and contemplation. It takes time. It takes effort. It's going to require that system 2 thinking. Your choices are almost reflexive based upon that decision. And oftentimes things that are huge decisions are made impulsively. Where am I going to go to college, or if I'm going to college, is a huge decision. To date this person or not to date this person is a decision. Nearly to the point that I don't know that I can come to a decision about those things. Like, I'm going to come to that decision on my own, but it's going to require deliberation with other minds to see if I want to commit to doing that. Whether or not this is going to be the direction that we go, or I go with us. Because like, if it's a relationship, then it's an us. And like, each decision produces like this potential for, produces this interdependence. And like, choices don't really have that. I'm choosing. Because of my friendship with you, I've decided that if you do something, I'm going to make my best effort to be there and support. So if you have an event going on, I'm here in town. I don't even have to, it's not a deliberation. It's not a contemplation. It's just like, what's my choice? What are the choices that will allow me to be there in support of you as my friend? Period. If I can't make it, this might produce the struggle of like, oh man, I really want to be there to do this thing, but I made this other decision previously that confronts that choice that is being made. And for reasons, and this is where reasons are great, I'm going to choose to do this, not over you, but I'm going to choose this, and I'm still in the future, or in the point previous to that, I'm still choosing you. It's not out of sequence. It's not something that's like so egregious. But maybe those reasons, like there's almost like an implied, not so explicit understanding we ask from our friendships that they understand our reasons for choosing not to be a place, when otherwise our choice would be to be there with. Yeah. I'm dribbling coffee on myself.